Hello, welcome to our RecapPlus channel with me, Matthew. Today we will watch a recap movie called The Invisible Boy, released in 2014. This is a spoiler content video. So please turn on the subtitle and let's start the story. The movie begins in Trieste, Italy, where Michele Silenzi is riding his bike on his way to school. He stops by a store with plans to buy a superhero costume using his €50 note. Later, at school, he sits behind Stella, his longtime crush, and discreetly takes a video of her with his phone. A few moments later, a police officer named Giovanna enters the room and inquires about a missing student named Martino. She asks the class to inform the police if they hear any news about the missing student before leaving. Giovanna approaches Michele, who is visibly nervous. She then gives him the snack he had forgotten at home, revealing that Giovanna is actually Michele's mother. After Giovanna leaves, Michele's nose starts bleeding, and he rushes to the toilet. Moments later, Brando and Ivan, two bullies from his school, confront Michele and take the money he had saved for his costume. Disheartened by yet another difficult day at school, Michele goes home. However, Michele is not one to give up easily. He brings out a few coins he had saved and uses them to buy a superhero costume. He goes to a rundown store and asks if they have a superhero costume available. The shopkeeper hands him a cheap-looking suit that once belonged to a Chinese superhero. Although he doesn't particularly like it, Michele buys the costume anyway. Back at home, Giovanna sees her son wearing his costume but is too depressed to go to the party he's planning to attend. Being a good mother, she lies and tells him he looks good, encouraging him to go to the party. Despite his initial reservations, Michele starts enjoying himself at the party and even manages to strike up a conversation with his crush, Stella. Unfortunately, things quickly take a turn for the worse when his bullies play embarrassing videos of Stella from Michele's phone. Overwhelmed and humiliated, Michele runs from the party and locks himself in the bathroom. Outside, his classmates bang on the door, asking him to open up. Frustrated with his life in the costume, he wishes to become invisible. In a strange twist of fate, Michele jumps out of the window and goes home. The next morning, Michele wakes up and discovers that he has become invisible. His mother, Giovanna, enters his room to wake him up but is surprised to find that he's not there. While Giovanna wasn't looking, Michele wrote a note pretending that she had left for school early. She covered her entire body with long sleeves and clothing to hide her invisibility. At school, she secretly watched Stella from a distance and imagined various pranks she could pull off with her newfound powers. She also kept an eye on her bullies and plotted their comeuppance. Michele decided to escalate her invisible escapades. She stripped off all her clothes and went to school in the nude, taking advantage of her invisibility. In class, she seized Ivan's paintball gun and fired it at the teacher, causing Ivan to take the blame and face punishment. Later, she sabotaged Brando's tennis match, leading to Brando's defeat and punishment. The following day, Michele believed it was time for a bold move. She ventured into the girls' bathroom, relishing the steamy atmosphere and the thought of what she could do. However, her fun was interrupted when someone threw a towel at her, exposing her presence. To make matters worse, her invisibility began to fade, and the girl screamed upon seeing Michele undressing under the towel during class. In the next class, a psychologist named Bosley delivered a lecture on mental health for teenagers. It was revealed that, besides Martino, Brando had also disappeared. Bosley believed that understanding the minds of teenagers could aid in the investigation. During Bosley's lecture, Michele's hands began to glow, and she suddenly became visible again. Luckily, the class ended just in time, allowing her to flee before anyone could see her transformation. Michele rushed home and found her younger sister, Candela, in her room. She ordered Candela to leave the room while she faced the wall, but Candela, suspicious of her brother, pretended to leave and close the door, thinking she was alone. Michele inadvertently revealed her powers to Candela when she undressed without checking if she was alone. Candela screamed in fear, but Michele managed to calm her down and explain that her strange costume had given her superpowers. Meanwhile, Giovanna worked with Bosley on the case of the missing children. Giovanna believed the children had been kidnapped, but Bosley had a different perspective, thinking that the children were going through a rebellious phase, which was normal for their age. Michele remained invisible, leaving Giovanna puzzled when she returned home. Later that day, during a phone conversation, Giovanna unintentionally reveals to someone that Michele is adopted. Feeling surprised and hurt by this revelation, Michele leaves the house and goes to a nearby playground. While Michele is playing on the swing, Stella arrives and mistakes him for a ghost. Instead of running away in fear, Stella approaches him and asks if he wants to be friends. Michele creates a smiling face on the sand to celebrate their newfound friendship. Stella mentions that she has to leave for practice, and they decide to meet again later. Michele sees a man staring at him from a nearby bridge, even though he's invisible. The man walks away with his cane, and Michele realizes that he's blind. That night, Michele visits Stella at her home, drawing a smiley face on her window. Stella happily welcomes him inside, and they share a kiss. However, that night, Michele's powers start fading, and he runs away before Stella can discover his true identity. The next night, Candela convinces Michele to reveal himself to Stella. He makes his way to her gymnastics class with his dog. However, someone shoots Stella with a tranquilizer gun while she's practicing. When Michele arrives, he sees a masked man carrying an unconscious Stella on his shoulders. Michele tries to attack the kidnapper, and his dog bites the culprit's wrist, but the kidnapper manages to escape with Stella. When the police arrive at the crime scene later, they conclude that the children were kidnapped and didn't run away. Sometime later, Stella wakes up in a facility with a strange device attached to her head. She discovers that the blind man is Basili, and he's interrogating her. It appears that he was behind the kidnappings all along. After running some tests on Stella, they bring her to a cell, where she meets Martino and Brando, the other missing students. As this unfolds, Basili reveals that Stella isn't the one they want. The next day, the blind man, Andrade, approaches Michele by the beach. He answers Michele's questions before he can even ask them, as if he's reading the child's mind. When Michele asks who he is, Andrade reveals that he's Michele's father. Michele doesn't initially believe Andrade's story, but Andrade proceeds to share his narrative. He describes how he was once an ordinary person living in a small Russian town until they were struck by a nuclear explosion, resulting in the death of many and the mutation of survivors. These mutations granted them superhuman abilities like telepathy, invisibility, and flight, leading to their classification as specials. The government brought them to a military camp known as the Division and weaponized their powers for war. Andrade explains that the more they used their abilities, the weaker they became. Additionally, specials were unable to have children, except for him and Michele's mother, Elena. Andrade reveals that the birth of Michele was a cause for excitement within the division, prompting them to take him away from Andrade and Elena. In an attempt to protect Michele, Andrade and Elena decided to escape the facility. During their escape, Elena sacrificed herself to ensure Andrade and Michele's safe getaway. Despite Elena's ability to turn invisible, the leader of their pursuers managed to anticipate her movements and kill her. After successfully escaping, Andrade left Michele at Giovanna's doorstep, believing that she would take care of him because he had read her mind and confirmed her as a good person. Andrade further explains that the division is aware of a special child living in Trieste, which is the reason for the recent kidnappings. While they are talking, a nearby fisherman becomes suspicious of Andrade and decides to call the police. Realizing that time is running out, Andrade provides Michele with a special suit that turns invisible along with him. He erases the fisherman's memory and departs. Shortly after, the police, along with Giovanna and Basili, arrive at the scene. Giovanna informs Basili that Michele is adopted, sparking his realization that Michele is the special child they are searching for. Basili offers to take Michele home, and Giovanna agrees. Back at home, Michele notices dog bite marks on Basili's wrists, confirming his role as Stella's kidnapper. As the climax of the story unfolds, Michele attempts to escape from Basili, who is revealed to be Stella's kidnapper. Basili locks all the doors, and Michele turns invisible to evade him. Eventually, Michele manages to get out into the streets, where he encounters Ivan. After forcing Ivan to drive away, Michele reveals the truth about their classmates' abductions. Meanwhile, Stella and her classmates try to escape from their captors. Stella successfully climbs out of the ventilation system and sneaks past the guards. She reaches a tower with a searchlight and draws a smiley face on it, aiming it at the sky. Michele, seeing the light, rushes toward it with Ivan. However, Stella is caught when they arrive. Ivan creates a distraction while Michele uses his powers to turn invisible and infiltrate the ship. He successfully reaches the cell where Stella and the others are held. After releasing them, he reveals himself. Brando and Martino run away, while Michele and Stella try to save another captive. To Michele's surprise, Stella leads him into the hands of the man behind everything, the Russian boss. It turns out that Stella is under the mind control of the other captive, who discloses that he has been controlling both Basili and Stella to capture Michele. The Russian boss reveals that he is acting under Yelena's command, claiming that she didn't die all those years ago and managed to take over the division. He adds that Elena, now harboring resentment toward normal people, seeks to protect specials. The situation intensifies as the room shakes, and it is revealed that they are inside a submarine. Andrade and Giovanna arrive and discover the impending explosion. They rush to save the abducted children and find Bosley in captivity. Andrade reads Bosley's mind and confirms that he is merely under mind control. They manage to escape the ship before it explodes, with Michele awakening his telekinetic powers to wreak havoc and kill their adversaries, ultimately saving Stella. Once they reach the shore, Michele reveals his powers to the police. Andrade informs Michele that they need to erase everyone's memory of the incident, and Michele agrees. Before her memory is wiped, Michele kisses Stella. Andrade tells Michele that he'll be back and then departs after erasing everyone's memories. Subsequently, life returns to normal in Trieste. However, in Russia, a guard informs a mysterious figure, presumably Elena, that they lost Michele. The guard adds that they also found Natasha in Morocco. The movie ends with the revelation that Andrade escaped the division with 2 babies when he made his initial escape years ago. To watch more video like this, click on the videos on your screen, and don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. And at last I will say stay safe and stay healthy. See you next videos.